Is that better? Anybody? Anybody? All right. So yes, Office 365. Why are we all here? That's why we're here. So I am Jeremy Anderson. I was nominated for a Microsoft MVP Award in Small Business Server. I got that at the beginning of this month. I got my MCSE in 2005 with the messaging endorsement in Exchange 2003. And I work at Third Tier. Third Tier provides support for managed service providers, IT professionals. We do escalation support. So if you need help from us in anything that you could possibly think of, a link installation or migration, Exchange troubleshooting, migration woes, Active Directory woes, group policy woes, you can call us at Third Tier, and we will go ahead and we will help you out and help you resolve that in a timely and efficient manner. So today's conversation, this is what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about Office 365. If you don't have a subscription, how to get a subscription. The one thing that's kind of near and dear to my heart is single sign-on. And in our space, in the small business server space, single sign-on is a myth. People call me all the time. They're like, Jeremy, I want to set up single sign-on for Office 365. And I'm like, that's great. You don't really want to do that. So I'm going to go kind of through the options of what's involved in setting up single sign-on and realistically why you don't want to do it. It's very possible to do, but you really don't want to do it in our space. And that's what we're going to talk about. A new one that's really emerging more and more in the last few months, I'm seeing it in the help list and a couple tickets that come across the Third Tier desk, is coexistence in an existing SPS network. We have problems where if you're going to Office 365, but you've got an on-premise Exchange server, if you can't do the federation, if you can't do the single sign-on, how do you get it to work in your existing network without giving you a lot of grief? The next thing that we're going to talk about, or actually the first thing we're going to talk about is the last one on my list there, is Link. Link is the undeserved hero in the Office 365 suite. A lot of people don't realize or know about the power of Link, and I really, really enjoy Link. I'm tempting fate with the demo gods here tonight, and I'm actually running this demo through a Link meeting. What you're seeing there is a client talking to Link, and I will make it so that you can join the Link meeting if you want. The problem is that I put the picture over the top and I can't edit this. Let's see if I can pull it up. But if you guys want to jump in and join the presentation in real time, I'll make it so you can do that. So how many people here have actually used Link? Have you guys found a lot of different ways that it's helped out with your meetings? Have you found out a way that it's useful in your business? You can answer that. Somebody shout.
Playing around with it, trying to learn it. I took all of our Monday morning tech meetings into a virtual type thing. We didn't have to go on site anymore. We were able to just all have a good Link meeting, video, chat, the whole thing.
It's good for assisting other techs if they're having trouble taking control of their screen.
Exactly, and that's the things that I use this for all the time. The whiteboard functionality in it as well. So you guys, if you want to join this meeting, feel free. If you don't want to, that's fine as well. I'll leave it up there for a couple minutes. But yeah, that's exactly what I use it for, is helping out remote support cases. I'll send somebody an email link just like that you see there. All they have to do is click on it. It'll go on in the web page, and you can go ahead and join the meeting. It's got whiteboard functionality so that you can go in and you can go ahead and draw over the screens that you're doing. In this case, what I'm doing is I'm sharing the PowerPoint presentation. You'll see if you do connect, it uploads the PowerPoint to the Microsoft Office 365 cloud. You can download it onto your machine. You get the slides in real time. That's how you go ahead and take a look at this. So I found Link to be a very, very useful thing. I use it to call people all the time, do face-to-face conversation. As well as chatting. The other thing that this does really well is it integrates with MSN Messenger, of course. And although I don't know anything on this topic, I'm going to suspect that it's going to integrate with Skype very, very soon, which will be really nice too, because the Link UI is much, much better than the Skype UI. So I don't know if we've got anybody joined in. I'm going to go ahead and pull this back off of here. But that is there if you want to join the meeting. And I'll go back to the actual. Presentation. So yeah, the way this is working is this client over here is hosting as a presenter in the Link meeting. That one's a client that's joined in, and I'm just broadcasting the PowerPoint slide. When I go ahead and I change the slide deck over here, that's what you guys see there. And so this is a really good way to facilitate actual meetings with clients as well. You want to show them the slide deck, you want to make it available to them. Looks like I got a couple people in there, maybe not. What's that? The last characters are, oh, I can't read them. Who asked? You can have the deck if you want it. It's on this. The other neat thing, it's just a minor little trick, but with Link, if you're using Link in Office 365, you can actually schedule meetings online. I found this to be easier and more intuitive than just doing it in the Link interface. If you go to sketch.link.com, just like that, it just gives you a good web UI where you can go in and schedule meetings that you can send the email invite out to people, and it syncs back to your calendar, especially if you have an Office 365 calendar. It syncs in there as well. And that way you can go ahead and set up your meetings, invite people from there. I'm not sure why they set up the web interface, but I actually do enjoy scheduling my meetings that way. So, oh, I got a few people in there, cool. So if you're already all excited about Link and you want to try it out and you haven't done it yet, the other thing that I've, talking to people, I don't think they always realize about is you can actually get Office 365 for free. All you have to do is become a Microsoft Cloud Service Partner. They offer 25 free licenses of Office 365, 25 free licenses of Intune, and 25 licenses of CRM for free. A lot of people, you know, even if you already have an on-premise Exchange server, you want to go ahead and sign up for this. You can make up your domain name. You can use an onmicrosoft.com domain name. This gives you access to the product. If nothing else, it gives you access to Link. It's a free remote support tool. It's another one in your arsenal to go ahead and use. We know that Office 365 is not included in the Action Pack. This is why, because you can go and become a cloud service partner and get the licensing for free. I've had this now for 1.5 years, and I find it absolutely invaluable. You do have to take a short test. It's like 20 questions. You have to be a registered Microsoft partner. But to go ahead and be able to have this and just have, if nothing else, to show your clients what Office 365 looks like, this is the best way to demo it, is to use it. Yeah, go ahead.
Is there any, anything I ever doing Link for mobile?
For?
Mobile.
There is an iPad client for Link. I have it on my Windows Phone as well. I can't speak to Android. Do they have it for Android? They have it for Android. On the iPad, I know you can't share your desktop, of course, and I don't think they have video on the iPad. So we're going to be getting there, I'm sure. The cloud service partner, though, is definitely the way to expose yourself to the product because it is not in the Action Pack. So the biggest thing for me, if we're going to talk about Office 365, the one thing that really comes across to me is single sign-on. Single sign-on is what I'd like to say is the holy grail of Office 365 and on-premise. What single sign-on is when you have one password to authenticate to all your services. When you log into your desktop in an Active Directory domain, you log in, you open up Outlook because you have an on-premise Exchange server. You open up Outlook, it never prompts you for credentials, and you're able to access and read your email. Same thing, you log into SharePoint and it automatically comes up and you've got your SharePoint information right in front of you because your SharePoint's hosted on site or on premises at your office. That's single sign-on because your password is stored in that Active Directory database there on premise and your services are on the premise. What single sign-on is not is when you check that box that says save my password. And that is the biggest problem with Office 365 in the small business server space, I think. When you log in and you set up Exchange out in the cloud, and whether it be Office 365, Intermedia, any of them, you've got to now manage 2 passwords for your users. One for the local Active Directory and one for the cloud service, the cloud Office 365. When you do that, you can make the client's experience a little bit better by going ahead and choosing the Save My Password checkbox. But you're not doing anybody any favors with that. There is a lot of confusion about what single sign-on and how to implement it in a small business network. And I'm here to tell you guys, it's not sized for small businesses. It's not sized for small, anybody less than an enterprise network. There's a few things we can do to kind of make the pain a little bit less. You don't get single sign-on, you can get password sync. And a lot of people like to call single sign-on password sync or call password sync single sign-on, but it's not. So that's kind of why I'm nailing on this screen so much and discussing what single sign-on is. The first thing, when you get Office 365 and you go in and you log in the portal, and over on the right-hand side down at the bottom, there's a section called Downloads. And when you have the downloads, you have the ability to download Office, the link client. You also have a client setup wizard. Now the client setup wizard, it downloads, it runs a thing here, and what it does is it actually makes it so that your password caching is working across all the different Office 365 applications. So if you have Word and it's connecting to SharePoint, if you have Outlook and it's connecting to Exchange Online, if you have Link and you're connecting to the Link services, what the Office 365 Sign-On Assistant does for you in the deployment wizard is it sets up those applications to work with the Office 365 suite. This doesn't do anything for you in the sense of configuring your passwords. It doesn't do anything in the sense of saving your passwords. It just makes a cohesive environment for all the different Office 365 applications to work on your on-premise machine. It's Microsoft's official documentation says it prompts you for passwords less. So what that comes from is like if you're opening a Word document that's stored in a SharePoint server and you open it in Word, a lot of times you'll get prompted for a password because Word doesn't have the credentials, the tokens for the Active Directory that's up in the cloud. What this sign-in assistant does is it keeps that token and that authentication current for you so that when you go to open that, you don't get the password prompts in that situation, in that scenario. It does help you configure your applications. It sets the things up that you need to set up. When you're running the tool, it gives you this right here where it says, configure my application. So if you're going to set up your Outlook for the first time, this will help you configure a profile. Does the same thing with Link. Not only does it install important updates, but it'll install the social connectors for Outlook as well if you don't have them installed. And it goes through and it helps you just, like I said, exactly that. It prompts you for passwords less. So you can see this is not a good single sign-on solution for us. It's helpful. It makes our pain a little bit less when dealing with our clients, but it doesn't get us where we need to go. So the next thing that we could start to think about, and this is where people really start wanting to go with their setup, is DirSync. And a lot of people are like, all right, well, let's sync my Active Directory that's on-premise up to the cloud. Let's use DirSync. DirSync is a great tool. DirSync takes your Active Directory and it syncs it with the cloud. All right, let's do that. That's a good idea. The problem with DirSync is that should say now available, not no available. And why that's really funny is because it didn't used to be available in 64-bit, so you could really think that slide's really old, but it's really just a typo. So it's now available in 64-bit version. It requires a SQL database to keep track of what it's synced up to the cloud, of course. That's included when you install DirSync. It also has a feature now where you can choose which OUs you want to sync up to the cloud, which is helpful as well. The problem with DirSync is it doesn't sync passwords. It only syncs your directory information. So DirSync can be really, really helpful if you have hundreds of users. How many of you guys have hundreds of users? Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. How about hundreds of security groups? So if you've got 10 users and 10 security groups and it takes you 5 minutes to type them into Office 365, do you want to set up and install DirSync, which cannot be installed on a domain controller, which has to be on its own server, and requires a SQL database? Most people don't want to do that. In our space, where DirSync can be useful is if you have a really heavy SharePoint implementation with really complex security groups, and you don't want to have to recreate that. You're migrating from SharePoint on-prem to SharePoint in the cloud. That's about the only thing that I can think of in our space that makes DirSync a real valuable tool. Yeah?
Just to be clear, did you say it does not sync passwords?
It does not sync passwords. It just the accounts and the Active Directory attributes and information. So if you change, it's a one-way sync. So if you go into Active Directory and you have DirSync set up on your on-premise services, and you set up the user's manager in Active Directory and their phone number, it will sync that to the cloud. And when you log into Office 365, you'll see those changes. But it is a one-way sync. If you make a change in the Office 365 interface, it does not come back down into your Active Directory. It's a one-way sync, and it's authoritative from Active Directory.
Set it up on a one-time basis on a separate server and do a one-time sync. Just to get everything up there and then just to get it.
You absolutely can. You absolutely can do that. It's not designed to do that. They do have an Active Directory migration or an import tool in Office 365 that will do some of that for you. But if you do have a lot of security groups, or you've done this before and you've got a virtual machine and you want to set it up, then yes. I would be hard pressed to see where it would take less time to set up and install this than it would be to just manually import the stuff. But if you do have distribution groups or lots and lots of really complex Active Directory stuff, I can see where that would be a thing. It used to be with Office 365 that you could not take DirSync out once you had put it in. Once the Office 365 it worked with DirSync, it always had to. They have made that change now in the last 6 months or so, where you can remove it from your network. So, still no single sign-on. We can push it up there, and we can make us have less passwords, but we still don't get single sign-on. So, what is single sign-on? Federation, Active Directory Federation Services. Active Directory Federation Services is true single sign-on. If you sign on to your machine, you've authenticated then against the Office 365 services, you open up Outlook, and it just works. This is what we want. This is what everybody wants. Who doesn't want that? Nobody doesn't want that. Who does want that? I just want to see everybody's hand go up. All right. Thanks, guys. What do we need for Federation to work? We need that DirSync tool. Well, first of all, we need the single sign-on tool, the sign-on assistant tool that I first talked about. That's got to be installed on the client machines. The next thing you need is the DirSync tool, which has to run on its own box. It can't be running on a domain controller. Now, with the Federation services added into it, you need a Federation server installed. So now we've got a dead minimum of 3 servers that we need to have in our network to make Federation work. But here's the real catch. Why do we go to the cloud? Why does everybody want to go to the cloud? Let's come on, just give me the buzzwords. Less servers. What else? Give me another one.
Cheapest cost. High availability.
High availability, less cost. One more. There's one more. Support. Yeah, that's one I didn't even think about. The other thing is availability, redundancy. The other problem is once you implement Federation, now the cloud it requires your network at your office to be up and running, because you're not actually authenticating anymore to the cloud, you're authenticating to your servers. So all you've done is taken your Exchange server, put it up in the cloud, but you're still relying on your network to keep it up and running. So the point of all this is there is no single sign-on in our space. You can do it if you really want to, and I would love to see somebody do it. That would be great. We want to have the enterprise class features, but you really need to have CAS proxies, you really need to have network load balancers, you need to have multiple domain controllers, preferably in different sites, because if your site goes down, you don't want your people who can't authenticate to the cloud to not be able to authenticate to the cloud. Who's going to run out and set up Active Directory Federation services now that they know about it? Yeah. So it's okay though. We can't do single sign-on, and we're okay with not being able to do single sign-on because we do have one other option. And what we have is now in the Essentials line of products, we have the Office Integration Module. The Office Integration Module, no matter what Microsoft says in some of their screenshots, is not single sign-on. It's password synchronization. Password synchronization is okay. It's not perfect, it's not federation, but it's okay. It does what we need it to do in our space. Password synchronization is exactly that. It takes your password on-prem and it synchronizes it up to the one in the cloud. I'm okay with that. You guys okay with that? Probably some security issues. I don't think Dana's in this room, so we don't have to talk about security issues in that. But you know what, the fact of the matter is it does what we need it to do. I just really hate calling this single sign-on because it's not. And I think it's kind of clear now as to why that doesn't work. There is a catch, though, with our Office Integration Module. Our Office Integration Module, when we set up our users, and we go in here and we add them into Office 365, and we set them up and we make them work, our users had their password set 2 months ago. But now we've got our Office 365 up there that has the password expiration automatically set to 90 days. Our users' passwords never expire. So you can kind of see where this starts to present a problem. Once they expire in the cloud, what happens if they didn't expire down there? People still can't get their mail. Great for billable hours, not so great for customers being happy. Fortunately, there is a PowerShell command, and what you do is you have to download and get the PowerShell commandlets. You can find them on the Office 365 help sites. Download the PowerShell commandlets, fire up PowerShell, and then you literally go in and type the command, and I don't have it in front of me, but you disable password synchronization in the cloud. You can do it for all users, or disable password expiration in the cloud for all users, one user, some users, however you want to do that. You can't change the timeout. It's always 90 days, but you can disable it. So that's kind of important to know as far as that goes. Because that's exactly what will happen is either these passwords on the on-prem service will never expire, but the ones in the cloud will and the users won't know about it. Or these ones will expire at different times, and you don't want that to happen. So in this case, with password synchronization, let your client machines become authoritative, or let your on-premise Active Directory become authoritative, and disable password expiration in the cloud. There's also a new Microsoft Office 365 Outlook update that comes out. If you're installing with WSUS, you should have seen it by now. And it actually pops up a little thing down in the system tray that warns you that your Outlook password is about to expire. So that's actually a pretty neat feature now that was sorely lacking up until about a month ago. But of course, you can think like your users, and if they get that and they try changing their password on their machine, of course it doesn't change it in the cloud. So.
Speaking of data,
No.
that's authentication for Office 365. I've only just read about that. I don't know much about it. Do you know anything about that?
I have seen Dana's product, and it looks very intriguing. I refuse to start a war with Dana, but what he's offering is not single sign-on. He's offering some form of token-based authentication. I'm using the exact definition of the word, single sign-on, in that case.
It seems to sort of do that because it kind of puts it all in place.
Yep, I believe he's using a form of token authentication and password synchronization, but I don't know that much about his product, so I'm not going to speak to that. Yeah?
Did I hear you right? You said that you can, with the PowerShell, you can disable the expiration on the Office 365?
Yep.
Although Microsoft is saying you have
You have to have a high secure password. I don't know if you can change the password complexity requirements or not. I honestly don't, but you can disable it. You have to download and load up the Office 365 PowerShell commandlets, and then it's just a matter of typing in the command. I just don't have it because I decided to do this, and it's in my notes on the slide, which I can't see, but catch me after this, I'll show you the list. You have to download the Office integration modules, Office 365 integration modules for PowerShell. So, how many people have now installed any flavor of SPS 2000, whatever, and you got it in there and you're getting ready to install Office 365, or you're using Office 365, but you've got a problem in your network. Your problem is Outlook will not leave you alone now. It wants your password. It wants to auto-configure because your mailboxes for Contoso.com are up in the cloud, but you still have an Exchange server on premise that thinks that it's part of the Contoso.com network. Have you guys seen this problem where it's prompting over and over and over again? We sat down and we tried to figure out the best way to solve this. Credit goes to Cliff Gallagher, who's hiding in the back in this room. The way to fix this problem, and I think this is the best thing to tell you, is to go in and delete the auto-discover directory in IIS. Don't just go in here and delete this though. We get to use PowerShell for this. Now, the PowerShell command to delete the auto-discover virtual directory is, wait for it, remove auto-discover virtual directory. I like that one. It's right there. If you go ahead and you run the auto-discover virtual directory, it removes the auto-discover virtual directory. All the SPS wizards still work. All the users still work. So when you go ahead and you create a new user, they create a mailbox on site, and it works like it's supposed to. But Outlook doesn't try to become authoritative again for Contoso.com, which you now have hosted up in Office 365. And so it doesn't prompt you for those usernames and passwords like you get sometimes. I think that's the biggest thing, is it doesn't break the SPS wizards. And you don't have to touch the client. There's a lot of registry hacks out there where you can go in, you can make changes in the Outlook setup and configuration. But this one really, it's zero touch on the client. It just works, and it doesn't break the SPS wizards, which is kind of a nice thing to have.
Do you have any experience with Link Online and Exchange on-premise integration?
You need federation. Yeah. I have experience with that because I have Office 365 and I have Exchange Prem. They don't coexist. They don't know about each other because they're in separate domains. So it's federated.
The command was delete auto-discover directory.
It's remove auto-discover virtual directory.
I'm sorry, I missed the problem that was actually fixing.
So if you have Office 365, or you had an SPS server and you've got Exchange set up on your network, and you move to Office 365, what happens is because of the auto-discover setup in Outlook 2007 and 2010, it tries to find your user at Contoso.com. And what happens is it sees your Exchange server that you still have on your network, and it prompts you for passwords because your passwords are different between the two. It thinks that the Exchange server is in fact local when you really want it to talk up to the cloud. That's all because of this auto-discover virtual directory. So if you remove the auto-discover virtual directory, the problem just goes away. It's a very convenient and easy way to make your client's life a lot easier when you're transitioning from an SPS on-premise network to an Office 365 integration. Yeah.
Third-party applications like antivirus need to send email notifications. Is there any way for them to access Office 365 without Outlook?
There is. So you have to bounce it off of their SMTP servers. I don't know what their SMTP servers are off the top of my head, but if you go in and you look at the IMAP setup, because what that gives you is it gives you an SMTP server, you can use that SMTP server to relay your applications off of. Yep. And I would just create, a test, a scanner user or whatever to do that.
Where do you look for that?
So you would look for that in the client setup options inside the Office 365 portal, and it'll give you IMAP settings, and in the IMAP settings it'll have IMAP and then SMTP as well. So you can use that SMTP server for that. Yeah.
So I want to set up a scanner.
Yep.
Just for authentication. Doesn't have to have a mailbox.
If you want to set up a scanner to email out to the world, you're going to need a mailbox for it if you're authenticating to it. The other options you have is you can use a different SMTP server sometimes. If you have an ISP, sometimes they offer that. Or if you still have the SBS server in your network, you can still relay off of that as well. So.
You can install the SMTP from IIS.
Yep. So we're talking about, I didn't make a slide for this, but I can real quick. That would be cool. Let's talk about scanners for a while. We're talking about scanners needing to send email out to clients. And the question was, do I need a mailbox in Office 365 if I want to use Office 365's SMTP services? And the answer is yeah, because you've got to authenticate to be able to use the SMTP relay scenario. You could use your mailbox, but I wouldn't want that personally. The other options that you have are to use your ISPs or to install SMTP and IIS on a server on premise.
Are there unique settings for that?
What's that?
Are there any unique settings, you know, you run into CLS and that kind of problem?
You know, I have never actually tried to relay a scanner off of Office 365. Has anybody done that yet?
I have.
Does it work?
No.
No.
So here's the thing, it does require TLS encryption and most scanners don't support it. So the only bypass besides the you mentioned that first well is you gotta set up your own SMTP relay server on through IIS and that'll work for you. But then you can draw your own requirements. I actually wrote up instructions on how to do it. So my technician says I want to use it, I'll email them to you. This is kind of complicated.
There's your answer. Scanners, Office 365, not so much.
What about like email integration with like ConnectWise and stuff like that?
You're going to run into a lot of the same problem with ConnectWise because you need to point it to an SMTP server.
Well, then it's both directions too.
And it's both directions as well, exactly. The other problem is SharePoint in Office 365 does not allow for incoming email on document libraries yet, either.
You know, Microsoft's looking at fixing that?
I don't. I'm a small business server MVP, not a Office 365 SharePoint email MVP. But I will find out for you because I will email those guys. I don't know. I don't know. I would like to see that. That's one of the features that I actually really did like in SharePoint. Exchange 13 has public folder support, and they're bringing public folder support back into Office 365. So all those public folders that we loved.
Is there a time frame for that? Have you heard?
I have not heard. They released Office Wave yesterday to manufacturing, RTM, Office Wave. Office Wave is all the offices, which include SharePoint, Exchange, and the Office 13 itself. So that's our new thing to talk about is Office RTM yesterday. So, guys, I ran out of slides, but I'll sit up here and talk for a while. What do you want to talk about?
On the Office 365, when you use that in place of Exchange, do you still have the ability to do distribution groups and can you still go in and check mail that came through, for example, and look at System Manager like we used to and that sort of stuff, or are all those things gone under cloud-based?
Yeah, so there's two questions here. Two questions are, first of all, for using Office 365 in place of Exchange, do we have the ability to create distribution groups and contacts and things of that nature? Yes, absolutely, you do. And then the question is how do you track mail and see where mail comes from? So the way to do that now is in the ECP, the Exchange Control Panel. So you log in as your admin user, and if you log in, you normally log into mail.contoso.com/OA for Outlook Web Access. Instead of putting OA, you put in ECP, the Exchange Control Panel. And that gives you the ability to have administrative insight into your organization from the Office 365 Control Panel. And you can do that with on-premises services as well. You can do, actually, the Office 365 and the Exchange 10 ECP is actually another very underutilized tool in Exchange 2010 that people just haven't got their hands on yet. You can do user creation, you can do message tracking, you can do just about anything that you would want to do in the Exchange management interface from a web-based browser from anywhere. Remote wipes on phones, all of that's done through the ECP. Yeah.
I've set a few of these up for customers. They're about the forefront of the anti-spam scanning. It seems incredibly complex. It works. I'm not sure how to.
On-premise?
The fourth. No, in Office 365.
In Office 365, honestly, I don't know. I'm not even gonna. Cliff, have you done that? Forefront, set up in Office 365? Complexity?
Forefront for like a traffic management gateway or?
Like just the configuration of the anti-spam settings?
Yeah, when it comes with a standard, everything works, but changing the settings, I can't seem to work out.
Changing the settings?
Oh, I haven't dug into like changing the online protection.
Yeah.
There were some limits on the lower end stuff you can't control, like whitelist and stuff, but they made some changes to lower the price and open that up. So if you're expecting it to be the same as Forefront, just those are kind of the low end stuff, you should have some of it.
You also have to call the support and ask for access to the forefront.
Okay.
So then you'll have a separate, it's actually a whole separate login for whatever reason. You do separate accounts to log into forefront and spam.
So it's not enabled by default to.
Which is also a really good reason to buy E-plans and not P-plans, because you can actually call support with the E-plans. So yeah, so there's that. So guys, use Link. You can't have single sign-on. Can't do scanners. Office 365 is pretty cool, though. What else? Somebody else give me a question.
Which plan do you usually, we have all different plans, and we're trying to, we've got everything from P's and E's.
Yeah, the only thing you need to know when it comes to picking a plan is your E3 plan. Why do you want the E3 plan? Because it's got everything you need, and it's not that much more expensive than the E2 plan. Why don't you want the P plan? Because it's terrible. The P plan does not give you any sort of phone support where, like, if you need to do the message tracking within the Forefront, or you need to change the Forefront settings for whatever reason, you don't have phone support and the ability to do that. And it doesn't give you a clear migration path. There's some limits on the size of the mailboxes and things of that. The E3 plan includes the Office clients on it, which is actually a very cost-effective way to go about doing it. Because even if you don't need it, because for whatever reason you've got OEM Office on your desktop and that sort of thing, you can use that on your machine at home. You get the home use rights. You get the Outlook client with it that you don't get with Office Starter, things of that nature.
Your plan is not sitting on high available server as much as the plan back in Microsoft.
Our biggest challenge is, I got clients looking at Google Apps for $60 a year, and they gravitate towards the $6 a month Office 365 one you said, don't use that. That's the deep plan.
If you're competing solely on price, you can do Microsoft Exchange Online, which doesn't include any of the SharePoint functionality. It doesn't include any of the link functionality, any of that sort of stuff. I think the challenge here, and like for example, you see how I'm pushing from this one to this one using link. That's where your value add is. If your client's looking at it and they're seeing price, you can't compete with price. Google, they're the cheapest, they win. But you say, hey, you spend a little bit more and look what I can do with Link. I mean, you could sell them this remotely with the PowerPoint presentation and just show it to them. And that's where it really starts to sell. I love Office 365 and I love Link as far as that goes. Just being able to call people with video call, it's professional, it looks professional. You send them an invite, it's got their company name in it right there. So It's a really long answer to say, yeah, you can't compete on price. The P plan, it's not on highly available servers. It allegedly, your data can be stored in any data center anywhere. You can't call support. They do gear it at the smaller businesses, but if you want to go and try to do a more enterprise deployment, you want to push your clients into best practices, and best practices are an E2 or an E3 plan. All right, so who's going to win? Giants, Tigers, A's? Oh, go ahead. Boo-hoo.
I might mention, you were just talking about the E3 plan,
Mhm.
and we spent about 30 hours over the last couple of weeks troubleshooting a problem. So I thought I'd just mention it to the group while we're here. It comes with Office Pro Plus for Office 365,
Mhm.
which is just a slightly different version than Office Pro Plus like volume license. In that there's the subscription model where it has to authenticate your Office 365 username and password. On the download page for Office 365 Pro Plus, or Office Pro Plus for Office 365, the installer does not include Service Pack 1. So you get Office Pro Plus for Office 365 without the Service Pack. You can install the Service Pack if you run Windows updates, but you cannot install the Service Pack if you just download the regular Service Pack 1 file for Office Pro Plus. Or if you're trying to use a tool like we used, Kaseya, the installer would just fail. It gives you a pop-up message that says no valid product was found. I went round and round and round with lots of support people on Office 365, and the answer was the actual service packs themselves were supported, but just the wrapper or bootstrapper for the installer was not. So what we had to do is you have to download the Service Pack 1. There is no installer for E3 for Office Pro Plus for Office 365 that includes Service Pack 1. So you just get it without it. If you want to then do the service packs, it'll work with SUS, WSUS, or if you just run regular Windows updates. But if you want to do it otherwise, you have to download the Service Pack 1 file, extract it out. Into one of the extracted folders is a bunch of MSP files. And then you use like Kaseya or your RMM tool to run MSI exec with each of the MSP files, and that will be successful.
Gotcha.
So just because I went through it, it was really frustrating to give everyone at least.
But you're trying to push that with your RMM tool, correct?
I was either trying to deploy it with Service Pack 1 in the first place,
Yep.
found out it is not an option, or deploy the updates with our RMM tool, not by running.
So that, yeah, it'll install properly from WSUS, which I have, and the download install manually, but what he's trying to do is push it from a thing that can't see the version, which makes sense. But
Yeah, it was the service pack files themselves ultimately worked. It's just like I think they call it the bootstrapper,
Yep.
or the wrapper, that wouldn't work.
the other thing that always catches me, and I always forget about it, and then it comes back to me later, is when you download the Link client, it's going to ask you 32-bit or 64-bit, and your immediate reaction is going to be 32-bit because you have 32-bit Office installed, even though you're running on a 64-bit machine. But you can't. You have to download, if you're running on a 64-bit machine, you have to download the 64-bit version of Link. And then if you watch while it's installing, it installs it into the x86 program files directory. But the x86 one will not work if you have a 64-bit operating system, which is kind of counterintuitive if you're used to installing 32-bit Office on your 64-bit machine. So that's another one of those little gotchas out there that you might want to keep an eye on as you're going. I think we got like a half hour still, guys. You can ask me anything at this point. I'll just make up answers.
Okay, so I got a client, how responsive is the Office 365 support line when you call them?
How responsive is the Office 365 support line when you call them? This guy says kind of, sort of. John says he loves them. I got another thumbs up back there from Tim Carney.
The trick is you got to put the service ticket in first on the website. Then you call.
And you say it's an existing issue, and you're ready to go.
Excellent. Excellent, excellent.
What good sites are there for information on Office 365?
Thirdtier.net, we've got a blog. It's a great site for reading about Office 365 information.
Just hang up on
Is it?
You should version.
I honestly, I never use BPOS, so I can't speak to BPOS.
Was actually surprisingly excellent.
Okay.
It was really good. Then they did the transition, and seems like the lower tier guys were on the Office 365 side. It does seem to be getting better. We've been having more experiences of English-speaking people that we're working on. So
That's always impressive.
you know, there's hope. Of course, with PowerShell stuff, it's not as big of a deal as what the BPOS. You know, make that many phone calls.
There's another one just because I'm hurt for time. Windows Azure. Windows Azure is kind of neat. In our space, in the Windows small business server space, in the MSP space, I'm not a developer. It is focused at developers and building applications and scaling out SQL servers, but you can put servers up in the cloud. You can put actual virtual machines, VHDs, in the cloud. They're giving out 30-day free trials where you can do whatever you want with Windows Azure. So I went ahead and I deployed like 15 virtual machines and joined them out of the domain just to see how much of that I could play with. And it's surprisingly, it's a really good test environment for you to work with product. You can actually upload the Windows Small Business Server Essentials VHD into Windows Azure and create a test environment. And if you're just trying to do a 30-day free trial, it's a 90-day free trial. So if you're just trying to set up and test something, Windows Azure is an excellent environment for that.
If you're an MSDN subscriber, it's free.
Is it?
Free subscription.
There you go. Yep.
If you have an MSDN subscription, you just have to click on a couple of links to set us up. We've got SQL boxes, we've got Windows boxes, it's all just sitting there for free, and it's not 90 days. As long as you got the MSDN subscription.
Is it for testing only, or can you use it?
No, we've got SQL boxes that we have clients connected to.
Well, technically, if it's under an MSDN license, that's not a production thing. So yes, it is for testing only. Yeah.
Since you played with Azure a little bit, I thought I'd try this one on. Do you know that if the Active Directory is built into Office 365, will be extended over to a Windows Azure website, for instance, so you can tie them together to pretty much?
Yes, it's called Federation. It takes 5 servers, reverse proxy, DirSync. No, that's going to be the official answer, unfortunately, as far as that
I know
goes.
there's a new product, Windows Azure Active Directory.
Yep. Yeah, there's going to be Federation involved in that, no matter what you do.
Could you comment at all on the Office web apps? Have you used that much, or do you have clients that use it, or like what?
So the Office web apps, in my experience, and I'll be completely honest, I haven't actually used web apps in about a year. But in my experience, Office web apps are really, really cool. I used it on an on-premise service, not an Office 365 service. But essentially, I installed the Office web apps into the SharePoint server. And when you go, you can literally edit the documents in a browser. It works just like you would expect it to. The formatting and everything is built in just like it would with Word. What I think a lot of people get stuck on, and some of this turns into terminology, especially even with Office 365, is Office 365 and web apps are not a replacement for locally installed Outlook. I'm sorry, locally installed Word, Excel, etc. If somebody emails you in a webmail interface from you're using Office web app, or Office, you're using OA, they email you an Excel document. You can't click that Excel document and launch that in Excel. It doesn't work that way. I do believe they're working on fixing that. You have to actually download that attachment onto your hard drive and then upload it into the SharePoint site. And then once it's in the SharePoint site, you can click on it and edit it. But it's not that one click, I want to edit experience that you get. So depending on what you're trying to do with Office web apps, that can be a pro or a con. But if you need quick inline editing of a Word document, you store your documentation in Office 365, you go ahead and you launch it, and there it is, and you make your edit and you put it back in. You don't have to download it in your browser, you don't have to check it out, you don't have to check it back in. You can just edit and go. So the actual experience, though, is very pleasing. Yeah?
In your opinion, what's the most efficient way to perform an Exchange migration from an on-site server to Office 365? I know some people use things like migrationwiz.com.
My opinion is migrationwiz.com. Honestly, I can't find a con in that. It just works. It's got a lot of positive reviews. You can phase your implementation, and you can't beat the price. I mean, I wish they would let me shill for them, but you know, you can't beat the price because your time involved in setting up and moving those, they've got the tools in place to do it in a much, much faster manner.
How does that work? Or can you provide a summary of how MigrationWiz works?
They basically go in and they access your mail through a webmail interface, and they just pull it in and put it back to the webmail interface in Office 365. They've got a lot of stuff on their back end that they've wrote scripts and stuff like that, so they know the timestamps and the dates in the mail. They do it, you know, you're going to be limited to your bandwidth. If you've got 15 gigs of mail and you can only upload it at 768K, it's going to take a while. But because they've got their phased implementation, they can do that over time and then look back at the mailboxes that you've got and pull it that way through. The Microsoft tool just uses IMAP.
What did you say the version was? Site?
It's Migration Wiz. It's migrationwiz.com. So, no problem.
And this will, you point it to your Exchange server?
Yeah, they look at the webmail interface and for each user, and they go into the mailbox through OWA, and they pull the mail out and send it back up to Office 365 for you. So.
Have you ever used MigrationWiz to go from another hosted Exchange server from another provider over to Office 365?
I have not. I know somebody that used it for Google, and they liked it. Jessica says she did it.
It works well for Google Apps. Google Apps and Activate.
So I think we actually filled our time. Somebody was back there waving a 5-minute thing at me, so Mitch is itching to get up here. Guys, thanks for coming up here. Thanks for being patient. Thank you.
Hey, Jeremy, does MigrationWiz
.com.
story, the whole thing with the start menu thing. So I installed Office, or I'm sorry, Windows 8 on my Media Center PC at home. And I was all excited. I was showing my girlfriend. I was like, look, it's Windows 8. It's totally different. It doesn't have a start menu. It's great. And she's looking at me and she's like, no. And I'm like, but look, it doesn't have a start menu. You just click on the things on the desktop and they launch your application. And she looks at me and she's like a blank look. And she's like, that's what I do now in Windows XP is I just click on the icon on the desktop and it launches what's going on. And the light bulb went off on my head and I was like, nobody in the real world outside of our groups gives a crap about the start menu.
I wanted to hear your position.
That is the
Yeah, but they, you know, they'll say, well, all my programs are running on the desktop. And I go,